Solaris Prime was a planet of light, noise, and movement. Tall towers touched the clouds, and sky bridges floated between them like silver threads. Every hour, millions of beings moved across those bridges. Humans, aliens, machines. They walked fast, talked fast, and never looked back. Kaylani was one of them. She was a young Varelian, small and thin like most of her people. Her skin had a soft glow and her legs were long but fragile. Varelians were not strong. They were thinkers, dreamers, singers. But on Solaris Prime, none of that mattered. Kaylani had come to this planet to find a better future. Her homeworld, Varelia, was slowly dying. Resources were low, children grew up hungry. She had left her family behind, hoping to find help. But Solaris Prime was not what she had expected. People here didn't speak to each other unless they had business. Everything cost credits. Even a bottle of water had a price she could barely afford. Her translator chip often failed. She was tired, hungry, and alone, and then her legs gave out. It happened in the middle of the largest sky bridge on level 4. The sun above was filtered by the glass roof, and the crowd around her was thick. She felt a sharp pain in her knees. Then her legs bent, and she fell. She landed, hard on the ground. Some people glanced her way. One alien buzzed in frustration as it stepped around her. A robot paused for 1 second, scanned her, and moved on. A group of teenagers walked past, laughing at something on a hollow screen. Not one person stopped to help. Kaylani tried to speak, but her translator only gave broken sounds. Her voice was soft and the crowd was loud. She raised one hand. No one noticed. She began to cry, but even her tears made no difference. The sky bridge had a steady stream of feet and wheels passing by. The world did not stop for the weak. On Solaris Prime, everyone had somewhere to be, except her. Then something changed. A pair of heavy boots stopped right in front of her. She looked up through blurry eyes. A shadow blocked the light. It was a human, a tall man with brown skin, a stubbled jaw and tired eyes. He wore a simple mechanic's jacket stained with oil. A tool belt hung at his side. He knelt down beside her. "Hey," he said gently, in Universal Standard. "You okay?" She blinked, surprised. No one had spoken to her like that since she arrived. Her translator chip struggled, but this time the words came through. "Legs. No work," she said slowly. The man looked at her legs. "You hurt?" She shook her head. "No food, no sleep, weak." He frowned. "How long you been down?" Kaylani looked at the passing crowd. "Long time." The man didn't hesitate. He slipped one arm under her back and the other beneath her knees. "All right. Up you go." Before she could respond, he lifted her gently off the ground. She gasped softly. Varelians were light, but she hadn't been carried since she was a child. He held her carefully, making sure her arms didn't dangle. The crowd around them parted slightly, more out of surprise than respect. A voice called out from a nearby booth. "Hey, you can't do that. No lifting aliens without proper clearance." The man ignored it. "My name's Tomas," he said to her. "We'll get you help." Kaylani stared at him. She didn't know this human. He didn't owe her anything. And yet, he had stopped. He had seen her. No one else did. As Tomas carried her through the crowd, Kaylani leaned her head against his shoulder. She felt his heart beating steadily. It was a sound of comfort, of life, of something strong. For the first time in days, she felt safe. They moved through the city's corridors, metal halls, floating platforms, noise and light fading behind them. Some people stared, others whispered. One child pointed. But Tomas didn't care. He just kept walking. He carried her not like a burden, but like something important, something worth saving. And Kaylani thought to herself, maybe humans are different after all. Thomas walked with steady steps, holding Kaylani gently in his arms. She was light, almost weightless, like a bird made of glass. Her skin gave off a soft blue glow that shimmered with every breath. He looked down at her small face. Her eyes were open, but tired. She looked up at him, confused but calm. Her lips moved slightly, but no sound came out. "It's all right," Thomas said softly. "You don't need to talk right now, just rest." The city of Solaris Prime was busy around them, as always. Floating cars zoomed above, and walking bots beeped as they passed. Huge signs glowed with ads in 100 languages. People rushed, by too busy to stop, too focused on their own lives to notice a human carrying a fragile alien girl. Thomas didn't care about the stairs. He had grown up on Earth where people were taught to help those in need. His father used to say, "Kindness is the oldest human tech." Thomas had never forgotten that. He reached a lift tube and stepped inside. The doors closed with a soft hiss. "Destination?" asked a smooth voice from the panel. "Medical Station, District 8, Thomas said. The lift moved fast, dropping down 20 levels in just a few seconds. Kailani shivered in his arms. Her thin arms clutched weakly at his jacket. He pulled, the collar up around her, trying to block the cold air. "You're gonna be all right," he whispered. When the lift doors opened, they stepped into a clean, white hallway filled with blinking lights and quiet voices. The medical station was small, but modern. A reception bot floated over to them. "State, species, and emergency type," it said in a calm tone. "She's a Varelian," Thomas answered. "She collapsed. She hasn't eaten in days. I think she needs rest, fluids, maybe nutrient repair." The bot scanned Kailani. Its screen flashed red. "Warning, Varelian is not a registered patient. No insurance record found. Treatment not permitted without payment or species treaty." Thomas frowned. "She's sick. She's a living being." "Policy is clear," said the bot. "Do you wish to pay 5,000 credits for non-member emergency care?" Thomas stepped back. That was more than he made in a month. "I don't have that kind of money," he said, trying to stay calm. "But she needs help now." "No insurance. No care," the bot replied, and floated away. Thomas stood there for a moment, holding Kailani tighter. She didn't say anything, but her eyes looked up at him. He could see the fear and sadness there. He turned and walked out. "Where are we going?" she whispered weakly, her translator finally working. Thomas looked down at her, a soft smile on his face. "We're going to my ship. I've got a medbay there. It's not fancy, but it's good enough." "Why? Help?" she asked. He paused, then answered honestly. "Because no one else did." Thomas's ship was docked on a lower platform. It was an older Earth-built freighter named the Iron Song. It wasn't pretty, but it was strong and reliable, just like him. As the doors opened, the ship greeted him with a warm voice. "Welcome back, Thomas. Medical sensors detect a second life form." "Yeah," Thomas said, walking to the ship's small medbay. "She's with me. Prepare a cot and nutrient." "Drip." "Confirmed. Patient bed ready." Thomas placed Kailani on the soft surface. The bed adjusted to her size and body shape. Gentle light scanned her. Robotic arms moved smoothly to attach a nutrient line to her thin wrist. Kailani winced, but didn't pull away. Thomas sat beside her and waited. For the next few hours, she slept. Her breathing became stronger. Her skin's glow stopped flickering. The machines gave soft, positive beeps. Thomas ate a simple meal and then returned to her side. He didn't leave. When she woke, her voice was clearer. "You are kind," she said slowly. Thomas shrugged. "I'm just doing what anyone should do." "No," she said firmly. "No one else stopped. You did." They were quiet for a moment. The hum of the ship surrounded them like a soft song. Then Thomas asked, "What's your name?" "Kailani." "Well, Kailani," he said with a smile. "You're safe now." She blinked, then nodded. Thomas stood. "Rest. Tomorrow we'll figure out how to get you home." Kailani's eyes widened slightly. "Home?" "Yeah. You said your legs stopped working because you hadn't eaten or slept. You didn't come here to live on the street. So let's get you back to your people." Kaylani didn't speak right away. No one had said the word home to her in a long time. It almost made her cry again. But this time, it was different. This time, she didn't feel alone. Thomas walked to the front of the ship, thinking of maps and fuel and routes. It wouldn't be easy. Her world was far, maybe even outside safe space. But he didn't care. She needed help. And helping was what made him human. The next morning, Thomas stood at the control panel of the Iron Song, checking star charts. The screen showed a blinking red dot, Kaylani's home system, Virelia. It was far, past 2 unmarked sectors and through a warp zone known to be unstable. Thomas rubbed his chin. Not the safest trip, he muttered, but we've done worse. Behind him, Kaylani sat up slowly in the medbed. Her skin glowed a little brighter now. The nutrient fluids were helping. She still looked weak, but there was more color in her face. "You're really taking me home?" she asked. Thomas turned around and smiled. "Of course. I said I would." "Why?" she asked again, her voice soft. "You don't even know me." "I don't need to know you to do the right thing," he said. "You needed help. That's enough for me." Kaylani lowered her head. "My people, they stopped believing anyone out there cared." "Well," Thomas said, walking over to her, "maybe it's time they found out someone does." They left the shipport and headed toward a larger medical center first. Thomas wanted to make sure Kaylani was fully stable before they entered deep space. He carried her again, even though she tried to walk on her own. "I can try," she said, holding on to the doorway. "Later," he replied gently. "Let's make sure your legs are ready." She didn't argue. Deep inside, she felt safe in his arms, like she was being carried by someone who wouldn't let her fall again. The Central Medical Center was a huge white building shaped like a dome. Inside, lights glowed gently, and the air smelled clean and warm. Thomas stepped up to the counter. "Human and Virelian requesting checkup," he told the desk assistant. The assistant was a tall, slim robot with a soft voice. "Please present your joint species access pass." "We don't have one," Thomas said, "but she's recovering from severe exhaustion. She collapsed yesterday. I've started care on my ship, but I want to be sure she's okay before we fly." The robot scanned Kaylani. "No treaty exists between Earth-Human Alliance and the Virelian Circle. Independent treatment is not covered." Thomas frowned. "I'll sign whatever forms you need. She doesn't have credits, and I don't care about the paperwork. I just want her checked. Only citizens or approved aid cases can be examined without charge." Thomas leaned forward. "You're telling me that you won't help her just because she's not on your list?" "That is correct." He looked down at Kaylani. She looked away, ashamed. The robot continued. "If you are truly concerned, you may apply for one-time human aid sponsorship. Approval time is 10 to 12 weeks. Thomas laughed softly, not with humor but with disbelief. 12 weeks. She needs help now." "We follow protocol," the robot replied. Thomas stood straight, holding Kaylani tighter. "Then we'll handle it ourselves." Back at the Iron Song, Thomas guided Kaylani into a reclining seat near the front. He had brought her soup from the ship's food printer, simple broth, easy to digest. "You were angry," Kaylani said as she sipped it slowly. "Yeah," Thomas admitted, sitting nearby. "I was. Systems like that, they care more about forms than people." "Even on your planet?" she asked. "Not always," he said. "But sometimes, yes. That's why we try, to be better." Kaylani nodded. "Virelians stopped asking for help. Long ago, other worlds visited us. We gave them songs, ideas, but when we asked for medicine or machines, they stopped coming." Thomas looked thoughtful. "Sounds like they took what they wanted and left." She nodded slowly. "Well," Thomas said, rising from his chair, "I don't work like that. You help me by reminding me why I do this job." "What job?" "Fixing what others leave broken." Later that evening, Thomas checked the ship's systems. Navigation was ready. Supplies were full. The AI, named Alex, gave a calm report. All systems stable. Course to Varelia plotted. Risk level, medium-high due to uncharted regions. Understood, Thomas said. Set course, we leave at sunrise. Behind him, Kaylani had walked halfway across the hallway, just a few steps, holding the wall. He turned and saw her. You're up, he said, grinning. She smiled shyly. I want to be strong when we reach home. You're already strong, Thomas replied. You survived when the world ignored you. As night fell, Kaylani sat near the viewing window. Stars blinked outside like tiny fires in a deep sky. Thomas sat across from her watching them too. Are humans always like you? She asked. He shook his head. Not all. Some are worse, some are better. But we try. Kaylani leaned her head against the wall. I think my people will be surprised. They thought humans were all fighters. Thomas chuckled. We do fight, but not just with weapons. Sometimes we fight with kindness. She smiled softly. That's a strong kind. Outside, the stars waited, and for the first time in a long time, Kaylani didn't feel forgotten. She was going home, carried not by machines, not by power, but by the heart of a human who had chosen to care when no one else did. The next morning, the Iron Song rose from the surface of Solaris Prime and entered the cold, quiet space above the planet. The engines hummed with steady power, and the stars stretched out like tiny lights on a black ocean. Thomas stood at the control panel, checking the ship's course. A long red line glowed on the screen, showing the path toward Varelia. There were several warning signs along the way: uncharted sectors, unstable warp points, and pirate zones. He took a deep breath. We'll go around the worst of it. Might take longer, but we'll stay safe. Kaylani sat beside him, wrapped in a light blanket. She still looked thin, but her eyes were brighter now, and her body no longer shook when she walked. This is your ship? She asked, looking around the control room. Yeah, Thomas replied. Old, but tough, like me. Kaylani gave a soft laugh. Thomas pointed at the star chart. Varelia is far. We'll need to pass through 2 silent sectors. Not many ships go there. You sure your people are still on the planet? Kaylani nodded slowly. We don't leave. We survive. Even if the sun fades, we stay. Thomas smiled. That's something humans respect. We're a little like that too. They entered the first silent sector 3 days later. There were no signals, no lights, no space stations, just dust and dark stars. It felt like flying through a dream. Kaylani stayed close to the window, watching everything. Do you ever get afraid? She asked Thomas. He looked at her. Sure. But fear's not the problem. Giving up is. Kaylani nodded. On Solaris Prime, I thought no one would ever help me. I almost gave up too. But you didn't, he said. That's why you're still here. In the second silent sector, the ship's AI gave a soft beep. Warning. Gravitational anomaly detected ahead. Thomas leaned forward. Show me. A swirling mass appeared on the screen. A small, invisible whirlpool in space. It wasn't strong, enough to pull the ship in, but it could make navigation tricky. We'll go around, he said. But going around meant passing near a wreckage field. As the Iron Song drifted closer, broken ships came into view, old and silent, floating like ghosts. Kaylani's eyes widened. What happened here? Could be pirates. Could be old battles. Could be accidents, Thomas said. Space is full of stories. They passed a ship that looked like it had been there for years. Its name was still painted on the side, the Celestial Wind. Kaylani whispered. So many lives lost. Thomas nodded. That's why we keep flying. For the ones who didn't make it. That night they shared a simple meal, nutrient cubes and tea. Kaylani asked about Earth, and Thomas told her about the oceans, forests, and the blue sky. Your world sounds beautiful, she said. It has problems, Thomas replied. But it's home, like Varelia is for you. Kaylani looked out at the stars again. I hope they remember me. They will, Thomas said. Especially when you walk back into the village on your own 2 feet, she smiled. With help from a strange human who decided to care. Not so strange, Thomas said with a Wink the next day they reached the final stretch. The AI spoke again. Entering uncharted sector. Risk level, medium. No contact with known stations. The stars here were fewer, and space felt colder. Thomas checked the fuel. Enough for one. Jump, maybe two. No mistakes allowed. Kailani stood beside him now. She could walk without help. She even helped prepare the ship for final navigation. You've gotten stronger, Thomas said. Because someone believed I could, she replied. As they neared the last jump point, a signal flashed on the screen. A warning in 3 alien languages. What does it say? Kailani asked. Thomas squinted. It says, "Do not enter. Dead planet ahead." Kailani stepped closer. That's my world. Thomas looked at her. You sure? Yes, she said firmly. They call. It dead, but we're still there. Thomas nodded. Then let's prove them wrong. He entered the final coordinates and activated the warp jump. In a flash of blue light, the Iron Song disappeared into space and reappeared near a small gray planet with a faint ring of clouds. Virelia. Kailani gasped. The surface looked dry and cracked, but there were signs of life. Small domes, lights and smoke rising from chimney pipes. A slow wind moved across the hills. They're still there, she whispered. My people. My family. Thomas smiled. Looks like we found home. Tears filled her eyes, not from sadness, but from hope. Thomas began guiding the ship toward a clear landing space. Let's go say hello, he said. And as the ship gently lowered to the ground, Kailani whispered 2 simple words. Thank you. But Thomas only smiled and replied, anytime. Because for him, helping someone home wasn't just a mission, it was what made him human. The Iron Song landed softly on the dry soil of Virelia. Dust lifted around the ship, swirling in the wind like old memories. The sky was pale gray and the sun looked tired. It was not a dead planet, but it was quiet, forgotten by the stars. Tomas powered down the engines. We're here, he said. Kailani stood at the front window. Her eyes filled with wonder and fear. She had left this world to find help. Now she was returning, not broken, but stronger, and not alone. Outside, 3 small figures ran toward the ship. Thomas noticed their thin frames, long limbs, and glowing skin. Your people? He asked. Kailani nodded quickly. Yes, that's my brother and cousins. They came. Thomas opened the ramp. As soon as the door slid open, warm, dry air rushed inside. Kailani stepped forward slowly, her legs shaky but steady. Thomas walked beside her, ready to catch her if she stumbled, but she didn't. The 3 Virelian children reached her first. They stopped in surprise. Then one of them shouted, Kailani! You came back, they rushed to her, hugging her tightly. She bent down, smiling, tears in her eyes. We thought you were lost, her brother said. I was lost, she replied softly. But someone found me. Thomas stood behind her, feeling like an outsider. But when the youngest child looked at him and asked, Is he your friend? Kailani turned with pride. He's the one who carried me home. Later that day, the village gathered near the center dome. Thomas stood beside Kailani as she told her Eki story. Her voice was quiet at first, but as she spoke, more people listened. I fell in the city. No one helped. No one even looked. I thought I would die there, forgotten. She looked at Thomas. But then a human stopped. He didn't ask who I was or what I had. He just helped. He carried me when I couldn't walk. He brought me here when no one else would. The village elders, wise and old, stepped forward. One of them, Elder Salan, looked at Thomas carefully. Why did you help? Her? The elder asked. What did you hope to gain? Thomas replied simply, Nothing. I just didn't want to walk away. The elder was silent for a moment. Then he bowed his head. You are rare, human. Our people gave up asking for help long ago. We thought the stars had turned cold. You have reminded us that there is still warmth out there. For the next few days, Thomas stayed in the village. He helped repair a broken water purifier, showed them how to fix solar panels, and even connected the village's old communication dish to his ship's system. Kailani watched him work, amazed. Her people, once quiet and tired, began to move, with new energy. Children followed Thomas, asking him questions. The adults listened when he explained simple tools. One evening, Thomas sat by a small fire with Kailani and her family. "You know," he said, looking up at the stars, "your planet might be small, but it has something Earth forgot long ago. Peace." Kailani smiled. "But peace needs hope to survive. That's what you brought." He shook his head. "You already had hope, I just reminded you." On the fourth day, a small scout ship flew over the village. It came from the Solaris trade zone. A message played from a loudspeaker. "This planet is not on any trade route. Travel here is not recommended. Exit immediately." Tomas listened quietly, then replied through his comm link. "I'm not here for trade. I brought someone home." The reply came, "That world is considered dead, useless. Move along." Tomas didn't argue. He simply shut the comm. Kailani looked at him. "Will they come?" "Maybe," Tomas said, "but they won't stay. This place has nothing they want." She thought for a moment. "That's okay. We don't need them. We have us." Tomas smiled. That night, Kailani gave Thomas a small crystal pendant. It glowed softly like her skin. "This is made from a stone only found here," she said. "It's a symbol of trust. It's yours now." Thomas took it gently. "Thank you." "When you leave," she said, "take this. So you never forget us." "I won't forget," he promised. "But maybe I'll come back. There's more work to do here." Her eyes lit up. "You'd come back?" He nodded. "Helping people like you is the best kind of job there is." Far from the city lights, far from the noise and rules of busy worlds, a human and a Varelian had found something special. Kindness, courage, and a friendship stronger than any trade route or treaty. And in a village once thought forgotten, a spark had been lit again. All because one human refused to walk past someone who had fallen. Days passed on the quiet planet of Varelia. The sky remained soft gray, the wind slow and calm. But something had changed in the village. Hope had returned. Children ran through the paths again. Elders spoke of the stars, and the broken tools in storage were now being fixed. Kailani helped where she could, walking stronger each day. And Thomas was always nearby, teaching, laughing, building. The once forgotten village was alive again. One morning, Thomas sat on a hill above the village, watching the sunrise. Kailani joined him, carrying 2 warm cups of tea made from local herbs. "You wake up early," she said, handing him one. "Old habit," Thomas replied with a smile. "Back on Earth, I used to start work before the sun came up. Guess I never stopped." She sat beside him, her eyes watching the sun rise over the distant hills. "We used to think the sun was fading," she said quietly. "That maybe it would, leave us like the others did. But it's still here," Thomas said, taking a sip. "Just like your people." Kailani smiled. "Yes, but now we have light inside too." That day, Thomas and Kailani worked on reconnecting the village's old signal tower. The tower had not worked for years, ever since the power core failed. Most believed it was useless, but Thomas had brought a small backup core from his ship. With Kailani's help, they lifted it into place and reconnected the cables. After some time and a few sparks, the tower lights blinked back to life. "It's working," Kailani said with wide eyes. Thomas nodded. "Now you can send messages beyond your planet. Let others know you're still here." Kailani stared at the blinking console. "We can tell them Varelia is not gone." "Yes," Thomas said, "and they'll have to listen this time." Later, a small celebration was held in the center of the village. Simple food was shared, music was played on handmade instruments, and children danced under the fading sun. Kailani stood beside Thomas as the elder Salen gave a short speech. "Long ago, the elder said. We believed no one would return to us. The stars turned quiet and we became quiet too. But this human did not pass us by. He did not ask for trade or reward. He saw one of us in need and chose to act. Thomas stood awkwardly as everyone turned to him. He was not used to being praised. Salen continued, we will not forget this and we will not be silent anymore. The villagers clapped in their own way, hands over hearts, a sign of deep respect. Kailani looked up at Thomas. You're part of our story now. Thomas smiled. I'm honored. That night, Thomas sat outside near the fire, looking up at the stars. Kailani joined him once again. Are you leaving soon? She asked. Thomas nodded slowly. Tomorrow, maybe the day after. There's more work out there, more people who need help. She looked down. I understand. But I'll come back, Thomas said gently. If you'll have me. Kailani smiled. Of course we will. You're one of us now. She paused, then added, what will you tell others? About us? Thomas thought for a moment. I'll tell them the truth, that Varelia is not dead, that it's full of strong, kind people, that someone should have cared sooner. She looked at him, eyes bright. Maybe they'll listen. Maybe, he said. And maybe someone else will stop next time like I did. The next morning, the iron song stood ready at the edge of the village. Thomas checked the systems while Kalani and the others gathered to say goodbye. Kalani handed Thomas a small box carved from Varelian stone. It's a message crystal, she explained. It holds our voices. Play it when you feel alone. Thomas took it gently. Thank you. He stepped toward the ramp, then turned back one last time. I'll be back, he promised. Keep building. Keep shining. We will, Kalani said, because now we believe we matter. As the iron song rose into the sky, the villagers waved. Kalani stood in front, tall and strong. No longer the girl who fell. No longer the one left behind. She was home, and someone had cared enough to carry her there. The stars stretched endlessly across the black sky as the iron song glided away from Virelia. Tomas sat quietly in the pilot's chair, holding the small, crystal box Kalani had given him. It shimmered softly, pulsing with the voices and songs of a people once thought lost. He smiled softly. This journey had been more than a mission. It had been a lesson. Back on Solaris Prime, news spread slowly but surely. A human had carried a Varelian girl through the crowded city, refusing to ignore her pain when so many others did. The story touched many hearts, stirring something forgotten in the busy minds of traders and travelers. In the crowded marketplaces, whispers grew, humans can be different. In the trading halls, leaders asked, why did no one else help? And in quiet corners, hopeful voices wondered if maybe kindness still had a place in the stars. Thomas thought about those questions. Why did he stop? Why did he choose to carry a stranger? The answer was simple. Because no one else would. Because sometimes being human was more than a species or a home. It was a choice to care. Days later, aboard the Iron Song, Thomas received a message. It was from the elders of Varelia. The transmission carried warm words of thanks and an invitation. You are welcome here anytime, the message said. You carried more than a girl. You carried our hope. Thomas paused the message and looked out the window at the glittering stars. Hope. That was the true cargo he had brought home. In the weeks that followed, Thomas continued his travels, carrying tools, knowledge, and kindness to places forgotten or ignored. Every now and then he checked in with Varelia, sharing stories of progress and learning, and every time, Kailani's crystal box sat on his desk, a reminder of why he chose this path. Back on Varelia, Kailani grew stronger. She walked through the village with confidence and pride. The people rebuilt homes and repaired machines, sending messages out into the galaxy to remind others they were still alive. Her story inspired many. The story of the girl who couldn't walk, the girl no one cared about, until a human carried her home. One evening, Kalani stood under the stars holding the small charm Thomas had left behind. It was simple. A shining sun carved from local stone. She smiled softly. "You didn't just carry me," she whispered. "You reminded us that someone can care." And somewhere far away, Thomas heard her words in the hum of his ship's engines, felt them in the pulse of the stars. The galaxy was vast and full of challenges. There were many places where people fell and no one stopped. But Thomas had shown that one person's choice to care could change everything. For those who watched and listened, the message was clear. Humanity is more than survival. It is kindness, it is courage, it is hope. And as long as people like Thomas carried that truth forward, the stars would never forget.